This episode of Wheat Pete's Word is brought to you by Syngenta. It's that time of year where getting the crop in and harvesting the highest quality and yield possible are top of mind. Reglone Ion is a true canola and pulse desiccant proven to make harvest more efficient and profitable. Reglone Ion provides fast, complete dry down of your crop, allowing you to take control of your harvest. Visit syngenta.ca to learn more.
Good day and welcome to Wheat Pete's Word here on Real Agriculture for Wednesday, August the 13th. On this episode of the Word, weather. We still have to talk about dang weather. The fight for science continues. Yeehaw! Performance data is available for the winter wheat crop and so much more agronomy before I run out of time at the end of this particular recording. Let's go! Yes, some people actually got rain yesterday and the drought has broken, so the drought can break. Wheat Pete and his farm at Lucan, we were one of the fortunate ones. Not everyone was that fortunate. Interestingly enough, the deep southwest down in Essex and Kent Counties, that's the Goldilocks zone this year. They have been getting almost from, as I understand it, because I'm sure there will be callers that say, oh, Pete, I am in that area and it is not the Goldilocks zone. But for the most part, they have been getting excellent weather this year. So kudos to you. You deserve good weather once in a while as well. But some brutal drought out there, and we will talk about that more as we move through this particular episode. On another note, the cranberry beans are already turning. We will have crans out of the field in early September. There might even be a few out the last day of August, something like that. So things are moving along incredibly fast. Hey, here's a note just on personal well-being, though. Holidays, family time. It is August. It seems to be that is the month when most people manage to get vacation. So critical. So Pete doesn't take much vacation. It just, and my wonderful spouse wishes I would take a little more, and maybe I will in the future. But last Saturday, we were able to have our entire family together here at Ingersoll, where I live. It was such an incredible Saturday that the family was home from the UK as well. We have two different branches of our family in the UK. And just watching our kids, we rented a slip and slide, ridiculous thing, but so much fun having my boys at 40 plus, almost 50 in some cases, just winding up and flying down that slip and slide, watching the grandkids have fun. It just, my mental health, I could just feel it. It just picked up significantly. And so do those family things because it is really good for your personal well-being, for your mental health. It will pick you up if you can manage to do those things. Hey, on that note, there is a tremendous amount of stress out there. Crop prices are horrible. If you're in a drought situation, had a caller ask if I could remind everyone that if you are in financial trouble, you can ask for debt review. It's a program through Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada. All you have to do is Google search Farm Debt Review, and I actually think it's Farm Debt Mediation Service, something like that, that will come up. But there is help out there to work through that process, and I hope none of you listening are in that situation, but if you are, reach out, because apparently that program is not all that well known out there. Hey, on a better note, really appreciate the positive feedback. Kevin sending me another note just saying, man, Peter, thanks for being a voice of reason in an insane world. And I'm thinking, man, you don't know what I'm like when I'm not talking about agronomy. I mean, in any case, that was awesome. Frederick on Twitter adding me to a list of top podcasts. Frederick from Denmark, and actually saying that Thursday morning is the highlight of his day because he minutes to listen to this particular podcast. That is so much appreciated and good for Pete's mental health for sure. By the way, Frederick sent me a whole bunch of cool information on how they produce winter canola in Denmark. We will get to that in a future episode. I'm not going to have time for that today, but that is awesome. Meanwhile, the fight for science just continues. Dean sending me a link to the town of Moonbeam that passed a resolution to push forestry services. I can't remember exactly now, but no more glyphosate. And I go, like, what? We spray glyphosate. We don't use it if we don't need to use it. It's just so frustrating. And then I saw some information that a study actually out of MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, very prestigious, from 2018, that said that misinformation spreads 6 times faster than facts. And that's not just a blip. It is because how the algorithms work in these social media platforms we have. This particular one was a Twitter one. Again, 2018, they may have changed their algorithms, but you just go, come on, people. Why don't we focus on facts and science? Why would misinformation spread 6 times faster? It is very frustrating for a science guy like me, but it does help you understand why misinformation gets out there so quickly. Okay, let's move on. And yes, the Ontario Cereal Crop Committee, the performance trials are available for Area 1 and Area 2 in draft format. And as I leave this, they aren't quite there, but we're very close. I think Jonathan Brinkman will have the data done, and Dale will have it up tonight. If it's not there, check back on Thursday. So go to Go Crops, and you'll have to look at performance data. We'll try to make sure that the link is right there first. But wow, that's awesome, because we have to make those variety decisions. There is a bunch of new varieties that look really, really exciting. So awesome that that's out there. Don't forget, though, that stripe rust was a big issue, and so you will have to sort of look at the managed performance trials more so than the unmanaged or the standard trials, because standard trials are not sprayed with a fungicide, and oh gosh, stripe rust really hammered. So Pete and Shane, my wonderful technician Shane McClure, we did some trials at the Syngenta Research Farm. They let us use their fallow land, if you will, to get it back into better shape to do the work that they used to do there, because that facility will be sold regardless. We had a variety trial that we planted, and stripe rust hit, and we thought we should try to learn something here. So we sprayed half of the trial with a T3 fungicide, which was a later than I would have liked application. I would have liked to have a fungicide on there at least a week ahead of when we actually ended up spraying it. But just to show you how impactful that disease can be, the 25R64, highly susceptible variety, we know this now. Unsprayed, 62 bushels per acre. Sprayed, 120 bushels per acre. A highly susceptible variety almost doubled the yield by having that fungicide applied. The most tolerant variety in that particular trial, and we need more than one trial data, so don't go on this entirely, but I find it fascinating. Grow 08, unsprayed at 110 bushels per acre, sprayed 133 bushels per acre. So even varieties that have some level of tolerance, we still got a 23 bushel per acre yield increase. R29, decent tolerance to stripe rust, went from 104 bushels to 137 bushels. And Fuse, another new variety that's really exciting, 76 bushels unsprayed, so it's clearly susceptible to stripe rust, and went to 137 bushels when it was sprayed. And in that particular trial, Fuse and R29 were the two top varieties at 137 bushels per acre. So very cool stuff. By the way, Chris also sent me some plot data. And hey, what is with everybody out there? You know that Pete lives on plot data. Oh man, the amount of plot data I get just is horrendously low. So get with the program. Send Pete plot data. All right, let's move on. And we want to talk about just the dry weather, the drought, if you will. And Donald asking a really excellent question. So Donald says, we're dry. We're not as dry as other areas, but I'm farming on a mallard sandy loam. And even though we've had almost no rainfall, the odd little shower, but not many, our edible beans, our white beans, they are 4 feet tall. They have runners like crazy. The corn is looking excellent. Is it possible that those white beans are just rooting that deeply and that we're just able to get more water? And so the answer is no. Edible beans don't root that deeply. They might be 3 feet deep if you're lucky, but deep roots are one thing, but it's really about the capillary action and the depth of soil and how that water that's deeper can actually move through capillary action back up to the crop. So we did, Lindsay and I on Agronomy Monday did a really good session, I think at least, on water movement and water demand and how this all works. So we'll link it in the post. And I'm not going to talk too much more about it here, but I will say that, wow, very cool that a lot of growers are now listening to Agronomy Monday, because I am often on Agronomy Monday. We talk about agronomic things. And so now they're asking me questions or giving me feedback about Agronomic Monday as well. So that's really, really cool. I talked about field variability. Gord sending me two pictures, one from one end of the field, and you'd look at it and say, oh yeah, those soybeans are droughted. But, a rain, they're still got some potential. And then you look at it from the other end of the field, and it's like, oh, they are pretty much dead at that end of the field. So this field variability, this depth of topsoil, the amount of compaction, how that works up through the soil through capillary action to help that crop, or you get into shallow soils and you just don't have that same depth. I mean, gosh, Tim Lamyman set a new world record in the UK for canola yields. No wheat records this year, but a canola record. And they have been one of the driest years on record in the UK as well. And you say, how can that be? But he is on this soil, this brush soil that it just is chalk, and the chalk holds moisture, and that roots can get the moisture out of the chalk, and the moisture can migrate out of the chalk through capillary action and feed the crop. So even though they're super dry, canola, which is much deeper rooted, by the way, than the edible bean crops that Donald has, but it just got enough moisture to set a new world record. It really does kind of give you that thought process. Kevin sending me an amazing picture of corn under significant drought stress that used to be excellent. And we will include that picture in the post. Have a look at it. So the cobs on that corn are big. It clearly pollinated well. Everything was going super. But it ran out of moisture. And this is on good soil. Kevin farms close to me near Lucan and has better soil than I have. And you just go, wow. And what is the outcome of that particular corn crop? What's interesting is that corn crop is so short on moisture, it's burnt every leaf off right up until the cob leaf, and the cobs are now starting to turn down. So there's so little moisture that the shank cells, the shank cells are what hold the cob upright, and that typically stays until maturity. No, there's so little moisture that the cells don't have what we call turgor pressure. They can't stay expanded. And so as they let go, as they kind of give in, that cob is starting to turn down. Now, Kevin was one of the lucky ones. He got rain yesterday. Going to be phenomenally interesting to see if the orientation of those ears stand back up now that there is some water there to give the cells turgor pressure. There is a whole bunch of other things that are going on out there. I've seen some videos talking about corn still shedding pollen and still hopeful after 14 days, hopeful that those cobs will pollinate. And they may pollinate. the challenge is, and we've talked about this before, you go back to Terry Daynard's doctoral thesis. He looked at that tassel to silk interval, and they could predict yield based on how much difference there was between the tassel emerging and the silk emerging. Well, if you get a 14-day difference between when that silk came out and when it actually pollinates, it may pollinate, but the yield is definitely going to be significantly reduced. It's just one of those things that are going to happen. The other question is, what's the yield impact? And that is going to be incredibly dependent on weather and individual area in the field and how much that capillary action could help. You can't figure that out. And the last question that I'm getting is, okay, Peter, so you farm at Lucan. Man, you got 1.25 inches of rain yesterday. How much does that help? In soybeans, we're not going to see many more pods. Most of the soybeans, the pod set has finished. Maybe in the very longest maturing varieties, we will see a few more pods. It will be all kernel size, and kernel weight can have up to a 10%, pretty easily a 10% difference in yield. So it can help us increase that yield or maintain that yield, but I think that's really the key factor. Rain now, all it does is stop the yield loss, and there's already, in many cases, pretty significant yield loss. Hey, just on that note, though, I do want to mention soil health, because some really cool data around soil health, and we talk about this lots, but we rarely get situations where we can see what kind of an impact it has. So, managed to get out with my good friend Brett on Sunday, and we're in 3 different fields. 2 of them were good rotations, but manure in the rotation, but not pasture for a long time, not hay for a long time. And they had pollinated well. Brett's under drought stress, there's no doubt. The leaves are firing up. They hadn't fired the ear leaf yet, but pollination was solid, kind of 18 rows around and up to 40 kernels long, and things looked good. And then Brett takes me to a field that he just got this year from a neighbor, and it had been horse pasture for as long as he could remember. Same hybrid, corn hybrid, same everything, except not much manure applied, just the way things worked out. So that hasn't been over the history manure applied there, unlike the other fields, and manure is a plus. But the impact of that pasture, the impact of that soil health, so incredible that instead of 18 rows around by 40 kernels long, we were now 22 kernels around, or rows, I should say, rows around by 40 kernels long. So unbelievable, the impact of that soil health. Some really great data coming out of Ohio State University, looking at 60 years of no-till, 2 different soils. On their silt loam soil, the no-till performed very well right out the gate. On their poorly drained clay loam soil at Hoytville, it took between 30 and 40 years for no-till to catch up to the moldboard plow, and now, after 60 years, their no-till soybeans are out-yielding the moldboard plow on a very consistent basis. And we all look at tillage, and I'm guilty of it as well. Wheat Pete is guilty of it as well. We've done lots of trials. We've done what we consider long-term trials, where it's 10 years. Look at the Elora Research Station. No-till soybeans are still not performing as well as tilled soybeans in the long-term rotation trials there, and maybe they never will. But in that Hoytville data, 30 to 40 years before the improved soil health from lack of tillage or from the reduction in tillage, not using the moldboard plow, actually showed that, that most of us just don't have that long. But it does drive home the impact of this soil health. Hey, I want to talk briefly about wheat because I got a couple of feedbacks on wheat. I think it's really important. Or really cool. Greg, on Agronomy Monday, I said, man, the prices in the sewer, most farmers don't want to grow wheat because it's not economic. but look at the impact that rotation has when we're under drought conditions. And I'm pretty sure a whole lot of people listening are going to say, Peter, I put wheat in the rotation. My crops are dying from drought. There are limits. But it is in stressful years where a good rotation helps. We often see this 30% yield benefit to other crops in the rotation when we include wheat in the rotation. So Greg saying it's the best time ever to grow winter wheat, and Mark saying, wow, we have amazing winter wheat this year. Some of our fields, at 130 bushels per acre, and I look across the ditch and the corn is just going to be not very good. How's that? Because of the difference in when it needs moisture. And so wheat in the rotation does help put your eggs in more than one basket, and certainly does benefit soil health. Hey, on another note, Tom and Tony both saying, do I wait? We're dry. There's no moisture. Do I wait to summer seed my alfalfa? That's Tom's question. Tony's saying, do I wait to seed my cover crop? Because we're 3, 4, 6 inches deep. There is simply no moisture. And I did respond to Tom, and I said, alfalfa, I'm not sure I'd seed it right away because there's no rain in the forecast, but I definitely want it planted before the rain comes. And then yesterday, with almost no rain forecasted, Pete gets 1.25 inches of rain. And I'm thinking, man, if I was Tom, I would have wished I had that alfalfa seeded before the 1.5 inches of rain. So my answer in both cases is, if you can get it in the ground. With alfalfa, I want it 1/2 inch. With my cover crop oats, I want it 1 inch. If you can manage to get it in the ground, just go plant. Because once you plant, then if it does rain, if you catch this pop-up thunderstorm, it's in the ground, it'll use that moisture, it will germinate and grow. The only reason I would not plant and I would wait is if I'm looking at perennial weeds and I say, well, if I wait and let them get a little more growth, I can maybe do weed control and hit them before I plant that cover crop. And that would be the one time when I might not put those cover crops or that alfalfa in the ground. Okay, last, there are spider mites out there like crazy. We are going to link Tracy Bowdy's article about resistant spider mites. And wow, the range is from 0% control when you spray dimethoate on spider mites, which, by the way, is the only product we have, to 100% control, and it's incredibly site-specific. So if you're out there and you do decide to spray spider mites, monitor and give us feedback on whether or not you actually see knockdown from the insecticide that you use, because it is just incredible. And next week, and by the way, if you are planting that cover crop, 50 pounds of nitrogen. Josh sent me some data, or not data, rather some observations. And without nitrogen on the oat crop, we just see this massive yield drag in the next corn crop, and added nitrogen doesn't help. I'm going to talk more about that next week, but because I find it incredibly interesting. But that's all I have for time right now. That's it. That's all on behalf of the team here at Real Agriculture. This is Wheat Pete with the word for Wednesday, the 13th of August. Hey, thanks for listening. Send me the questions. Send me the data so I can talk too long yet again next week. See you then.
Thank you for downloading this episode of Wheat Pete's Word, brought to you by Syngenta and Reglone Ion. Speed up and even out the natural dry down process and preserve your crop quality and yield. Reglone Ion lets you out of the field and into the bin faster with a true canola and pulse desiccant. Talk to your Syngenta rep to learn more.